but I'm sure some of the principles are the same. So let's have a chat. Very nice to see you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter. Well, let's dig in right away. I mean, you come from an artistic family, right? I mean, your father was a well-known choreographer and dancer. How did you end up being a musician? How would you characterize that?
Well, yeah, as you said, my dad was he was a choreographer and a dancer, and became a cabaret artist, and used to do a lot of shows. So as a kid, I was always around it. I'd see him working with musicians, and I just sort of thought they were cool. I just thought these guys they all wore cool leather jackets, and they sort of seemed to have cool 70s haircuts. So I just started watching it, and I had me and my brother and sister, we all had a few piano lessons when we were very young, and we all sort of gave up. We were like 5 or something like that, and the teacher sort of said to my mum, he might have a bit of a talent for it, but they couldn't convince me, so I gave up for a bit. And then I think I was about 11, and my dad, I didn't know what I wanted for Christmas, and my dad for some reason bought me a saxophone, and I got very good at playing the saxophone and the clarinet at school. And then I think the point when I think drove me definitely into doing this forever was accidentally hearing Songs in the Key of Life by Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder, yes.
Which maybe that was the day that, aged about 14, that I just went, I think I'd like to be able to do this. I mean, I don't know if so I spent a year trying to learn and sing that whole record. And I could do some of it, but no one can do it like him.
No.
And from there, into professional, I just became very good at it at school, and music college. So it was the thing that I wanted to do. So I went to one of the big London music schools. I didn't finish there. I sort of, this is not advice for your students. You should all finish your course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up leaving because I was already getting offered a lot of work and starting to have a lot of experience, and I sort of went that route. And yeah, just the usual, few weddings, playing bar mitzvahs, playing all sorts of anything that would pay me a few quid, playing in pubs, and then got a couple of good calls, which started a bit of a career, thankfully.
Yeah, the ever-present wedding gigs. I know what you mean.
Absolutely.
It's really cool that you mentioned Songs in the Key of Life. That album's like a force of nature. I mean, it's one of those albums that when you listen to it, it's like it's been around forever. That's the feeling that you get.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. I went to see him in Hyde Park when he did the whole record. He was doing a tour, playing the whole record. This was a 4-hour concert. Now,
wow.
When you're in music like me, any concert that's more than 2 hours, I'm normally bored. But I could have gone on for another 4 hours. It was, it's just, I don't know what it is about that record, but it's true for so many people. It's just so organic. It sort of came together. And when I heard it when I was 14, I think I put on the side with I Wish on it. And by the time it got to Pastime Paradise, I was like, God, this is the best thing I've ever heard,
Yeah, for sure. I think not only us, but all the kids, also the students, I'm pretty sure they can also, identify with that. Same thing happened to me. I mean, I decided to become a musician when I first heard Birth of the Cool from Miles Davis. It's something that compels you to do that.
Yeah, it just connects, doesn't it? At that age, something's going to really connect with your soul and your, who you are. And for me, it was that record, and for the Miles one for you, it's a.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And well, you mentioned a while ago, you was the saxophone your first instrument, really?
It was actually, I suppose it was more clarinet, because that's what they were teaching at school. So I had a saxophone, and then I thought I became very good at clarinet. I was a classical, wow. Went through all the grades, and I could have done it. And then, but then I realized that you know, if I was going to try and be Stevie Wonder, then I would have to learn how to play piano. So
yeah,
that's what I started doing, and so that's about when I started singing as well.
Yeah, because you're also a singer. You also play guitar, bass.
Yeah,
right?
I would call myself an owner of guitars and an owner of bass player. I'm okay. I'm playing a bit of bass with Depeche Mode now.
Yeah, I know. I know what you mean.
I could play with Depeche Mode, but I couldn't play bass with Miles Davis. I'm not your man.
Yeah, well, like I told you before, I also play keyboards, but I always see myself as a frustrated bass player too. So
I love playing bass lines on synths. I just love it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I guess it's that the frustrated keyboard player what really wants to be a guitar or you know.
So okay, thank you for that. I'm pretty sure that's gonna that whole approach has been very enlightening for the students, for the kids. So when the time came for you to, you know, start playing with Depeche Mode, I think you came on as basically as a replacement for Alan Wilder, right?
Yes. So previous to that, I'm sure you know that Depeche Mode had a very tumultuous 5 years.
Yeah.
After the 1993 tour, when everything went very bad and Dave had his problem with drugs. Martin was drinking a lot, and there was a lot of the band was really falling to bits, especially with Dave ODing in LA like he did. So when they came back in '96 to do that record, and then subsequently the tour, they really didn't know what was going to happen. And obviously Alan had gone, and they needed someone, so they ended up with me. Your screen just went off there. Oh, there you go. So at the time, I just thought it was really a 6-month job that I would do, and then who knows? You know, I was already playing with some other quite big artists, so it wasn't like I don't know. And then they just asked me to do, you know, a year later they said, "Oh, can you do the next tour?" Which was a bit longer. And then that was 20 years ago, and I think I've done 6 tours now. So it became a much bigger part of my career than I thought it would.
So would you say that a temporary thing kind of evolved into a regular gig, a permanent gig?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I think even after the first tour, they didn't even know if we did 6 months. It was quite good. It wasn't a long tour. They didn't want to risk it because everyone was very fragile with the last 5 years, and they didn't know if Dave would hold up. And Dave did an incredible job, and he stayed completely clean ever since. So he's in great shape. Martin was still drinking a bit, but he stopped doing that. So they're in good shape now. But yeah, and then by the time the second tour came along, I suppose that was a bit longer, and then it became apparent that we were going to form this unit, you know. So myself and Christian Eigner, the drummer, have been doing the records, and then we started writing recently for the records. So
cool.
Yeah, no, we're a tight little dysfunctional family.
So as time progressed, did you notice any changes in your usual routine as a musician, or you just sort of came to a point where you realized I'm a part of the band, and you just grew into it?
To be honest, that I always, whatever I do, like whether it's just turning up to play on a record for a day, or in this case, you know, doing tours with a band, I always try and sort of get into it to the point where I feel like I'm in the band anyway. So like, if you asked me to come over there and work on one of your projects, I would totally buy into it, even if it was just for a week. So, immediately, because it was a slightly odd situation with all of when any band that's been together that long, there's a lot of sort of old politics going on, and a lot of, they've been together for like 25, at this point, 27 years or something. I mean, that's longer than virtually most marriages. So it took me a while, but I'd say after that first tour, we were sort of all very friendly, and I kind of knew that if they carried on as a band, then I would be part of it. And then I started, I suppose, putting some of my personality into what we do. Mm-hmm. Into the arrangements, just some of it, because that's going to happen really with any musician. You're going to end up sort of imposing a little bit of what you do onto them, and it sort of worked. I think, we've had fun.
What you just said, I think it contains a really big lesson for our students. I always tell them that whenever you're involved in a project, as a producer, you're also a producer. You usually work with the artists, like, I don't know, 3, 6, maybe 8 months, something like that, and then they just disappear from your life, which is kind of weird, because you've shared so much with them. You've grown accustomed to each other, and then they just go away when the whole thing is done. But I always tell the students that you need, it's going to be like for a specific period of time, but you need to pour your heart and soul into it, and leave something of yourself inside that project. I mean, that's exactly what you just said. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, and right. If you just turn up and play the right notes at the right time, then that's okay, but it doesn't create great art, does it? It's more sort of, as you say, putting yourself into it, and like playing the right, your students are there to learn how to technically play the right notes and how to express themselves. And once the learning's over, then it's about you putting yourself in. You shouldn't be a slave to your technique. It's more, where can you sort of inject your personality, and also when can you not inject your personality and let someone else's personality come through? Which is, I mean, that's a thing that I know I was guilty of, and I think it's part of the journey to becoming from a competent musician to a good one, and then hopefully to a great one, is that you learn all this technique when you're young, don't you? And then you just want to play it all the time. And obviously, why wouldn't you? You've just spent ages learning it. But then it's sometimes to choose not to play it. Maybe make a choice.
I know exactly what you mean. It's like you go through stages, I would say, and that's one of the stages that you go through. And I guess that when you've experienced all the other stages, you get to a point where you say, okay, I need to play what I feel, and what the song needs, and not what I know.
Let the music drive it, and not you drive it. I'm totally for that, and I've seen so many musicians make that transition. It's nice, but it's just that, to the point where you don't have to think about your technique anymore. You just kind of feel when to leave space, and don't be afraid of silence or space, or don't be afraid of one note. Don't play 10 when one note would do.
Exactly.
And and listening to I think I've heard some of your some links of some of your students performing, and it sounds like they play. You can tell there's a lovely community spirit, and they're definitely listening to each other and giving each other space. It's very, very refreshing to watch.
Thank you. And since we're talking about this, since we're talking about conceptual approaches and methodologies, let's call it, let's use that name. As a performer, well, I told you before we got started that basically we have like 3 areas of specialization, and they are songwriting, producing, and performing. And as a performer, do you have like a method, especially before going on the road or something like that? Do you have like practicing hours, or how do you approach performing?
Well, I suppose it's going to depend on, I mean, if you're talking about my main job,
yeah, well,
I mean, it's very different with Depeche than anything else I had ever done, because apart from a couple of moments in the show, I'm not going to be technically stretched. It's just, that's not what that music's about. It's not about sort of incredible technical chops or anything like that, but it is about getting it to feel sonically right, and getting it to sort of, you know, sound like it's supposed to. And we our rehearsals are quite long before a tour, so you know, we tend to rehearse a few weeks, a couple of weeks without Dave, and then we go to New York and rehearse with him, and then we've got production rehearsal. So it's, I mean, if I could choose, I would like to rehearse less, because I don't like rehearsing too much. I prefer to be, I just prefer living slightly where I'm only half know the music. I've got a good memory. I sort of I can remember songs pretty quickly. So it's sort of having to rehearse something for 6 weeks. Actually, I start just getting bored and playing badly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but to be honest, it's necessary with Depeche Mode. I mean, I suppose the things that I mainly, if I'm going to work on anything with them, it's some of the keyboard parts are so precise and rhythmic and they have to be sort of, you know, we're playing to, obviously, along with track and along with loops and stuff coming off Pro Tools. So and if I've got to cross a complicated vocal with playing something, you know, complicated on a synth, I want to be able, I need to have it that the synth is happening automatically without me having to think. So I'll do that like a sort of, you know, the things when you just keep doing it until it happens without you thinking. Because, you know,
yeah,
it's one thing being able to do it in a rehearsal room, but, you know, all of a sudden there's 60,000 people in a room watching you do it, and it's a little bit more nerve-wracking. So you need to have it really down.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. It's
some of those lines with the vocals sometimes is a little bit hard for me.
Yeah, I mean, you have, the way I see it, I mean, we're on the same page. The way I see it is like you have to go and get to the point where your body actually learns how to handle the technical stuff, and then you forget about it, and that's when your heart starts
well, exactly, yeah.
playing a role, you know.
That's the good thing about getting your technique good, is that you know, you can stop using it. You can stop thinking about it, and just as you say, use your heart and express yourself, you know.
Yeah.
As opposed to, if your technique's not up there, then you're just trying to just keep up, aren't you? So yeah, no, totally. I think that's with them, that's what I rehearse. Other things, I mean, when I toured with George Michael years ago, I mean, his rehearsals his stuff is so precise. It's just so that's how he made records. You know, he was incredibly particular. I mean, he admitted, he said to me once, if I could do my own lighting, I would, because I'm a complete control freak. So that was a slightly different experience, you know, just really going in on the minutiae and practicing grooves for ages to get them just to sit the way you wanted them.
Yeah, that's the way to get it done. I mean,
absolutely, yeah. Right.
And well, we've talked about yourself as a performer, but you're also a well-credited songwriter and producer. How would you describe that side of yourself as an artist?
It's sort of changed quite a lot, really, over I've been with the Reservoir Music, my publisher, for a long time. Previously Reverb, and then they become Reservoir.
Yeah.
And Annette there, who's my publisher, she's been very supportive. So I've worked in a lot of different areas. I was doing a lot of sort of just straight ahead, writing pop music, even some classical. I wrote for some big classical artists, and so it's sort of changed quite a lot. I think at the moment, writing for the next Depeche record is my main concern. So I've been starting doing that, which is a very different. Christian and I work together on music. Send it out to Dave in New York, and he likes to sort of really sort of get down on the lyric side. And that's been great. Christian's got a great studio in Vienna where he lives, and I just go over there for a couple of weeks and we literally just jam. He's got a swimming pool outside the studio, so we have a little jam, have a swim, have a jam, and you can be so creative like that because you don't feel like you're working. You're just sort of should we have a little play? Yeah, let's have a little play. And as opposed to 8-hour days when I much prefer the sort of to feel relaxed. I'll get my best ideas when I feel like that. So that stuff, and it's good because he's obviously a phenomenal drummer, and he's actually a very creative keyboard player as well. So between us, we sort of, and I pretend that I can play guitar and bass a bit. And we've had a couple of nice tracks on the last record, and hopefully we'll get some stuff going on this one.
Wonderful. But
yeah, at the moment, I'm just generally writing some stuff, some of it for Dave, some of it for probably other stuff, but I'm not really sure what it'll be. I think it might be a project of some sort, but we'll have to see.
What about your experience as a producer too?
I suppose over the years I've done various bits. I've never sort of been enough. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
I've never really with various things. I've never sort of been working in one particular area in production. So it's been sort of different things. I did a couple of records in France. But not of late, really. I haven't really been producing much in the last couple of years. Small things, but nothing that's really sort of out yet,
I see. And we kind of brushed upon you as a producer, you as a performer, and you as a songwriter. Based on your experience, what kind of advice would you give to our students in terms of how to advance their career as a musician? I always tell them that my biggest lessons coming up in the industry were taught to me by my own mistakes. For example, those were my biggest lessons, I would say. So I don't know. What kind of advice would you give the kids in terms of how to, make some progress in the industry, especially in today's industry, which is kind of like a jungle?
Well, it is, yeah. So as someone a bit older, I think there's certain things that I think are still relevant, and the other things that I think your students are probably more knowledgeable about, more knowledgeable about than me. But I think what was it you were just saying about learning from your mistakes? I think that is it's a good thing to have in any discipline, but I think in music it's crucial.
You
just
I always tell them
feeling when you go, okay, I tried that and that didn't really work, so let's not do that again. And then that, I think to me that's what musicianship is. It's just weeding out. Well, I don't know if that's an expression that works in Peruvian, but sorry,
I know.
But like we getting rid of the things that, and it's all they are is just discovering things. You're going, oh right, I didn't like that. I won't be doing that again. And then you do something that you do really like, and you just remember that feeling, and then eventually that happens automatically, and you automatically make the right choices. and also what we were talking about earlier, which I'm sure, you know, it sounds like you guys are all over, but the sort of getting your technique to a point that you don't have to think about it, and then not necessarily using your technique all the time, and sometimes just like making the choice from a creative point of view rather than a look at me point of view, you know, check me out, check out what I've learned sort of point of view. And I know I've been guilty of that and probably still am sometimes, but you know, sometimes I do it, and that's again you go, yeah, I only did that because because I've wanted to show off a bit. I didn't do that. It didn't add anything. I shouldn't have done that. And you know, and that can be in production. I think in production as well, you learn those things, don't you? You know, you go, you know, like I know I always had a tendency to sort of overcrowd arrangements.
Oh,
in
yeah.
production. And it's just so
especially
tempting now because everything's at your fingertips, and it's so tempting to just go, oh, what about, you know, and then before you know it, you've just created a wall of nothing.
Yeah, that's a trap, and that's so tempting, especially when you're, you know, starting out. When you're starting out, you want to throw, I don't know, every note on the keyboard and every word on the dictionary into the song, and
then overlay the arrangement. So you've got this under here, then you add this part, and then let's have a look. And you're filling in all the frequencies, filling in, and then you think it's very easy to get seduced while you're doing it. I mean, I think that's a hell of a knowing when to stop is a real technique with production. I mean, knowing when you go, no, I've got it, that's it. It doesn't need knowing when to leave it alone, because it's so tempting to just, I mean, I've had songs that have just taken me a year to finish.
I know, and that's a real discipline.
Yeah, you know? It is, yeah.
Getting to that point where you understand that putting stuff in is not the challenge. The challenge is really leaving stuff out and making the tough decisions as this part is really cool, and I you know, I didn't sleep for 2 or 3 nights until I came up with this part, but is it really adding something to the song? No. Then you need to, you know, just take it out.
I mean, I always used to refer to it as a third eye, where you can sort of, because you remember, you're the performer, the ideas are coming from you, and then you're also the man who has to judge the ideas.
Yes.
Which is, you know, that's why it's good to be with, that's why Christian and I like to work together, because, you know, I know the sorts of things that he'll do wrong, and he knows the sorts of things that I'll do wrong, and we can call each other and go, oh, no, don't do that. You know, that's too much. You don't need that, you know. Yeah, but, you know, but if you're working on your own, you have to be the guy who creates things, and if you've got any kind of ego, you're going to assume that what you do is good.
That's also difficult.
It might be good, but it might not be right. You know, it might just not be right for the moment. Or it might be a choice between two good things, and you have to get rid of one of them.
And also, when you get to the point where you can finally realize that there's a really big chance that you might be wrong, that's also like a revelation coming up in this profession. You know, it's because in the beginning you think, no, this is it. I mean, this is my idea and this is it. And no, not necessarily.
I think not just in music, but in every field of the world at the moment, it'd be nice if a few people could just go, you know what, I might be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely in music. But I think we should take that across the board, because nobody wants to be wrong anymore. I love being wrong. I'm quite happy being told I'm wrong.
Yeah, you get to a point where it's kind of like a relief, actually, you know.
Yeah. Perfect. Great. You take responsibility.
Yeah. We're coming to a point where I think we're going to have some questions from the audience. But before that, I would really like to ask you a question of how would you describe the current state of affairs in the music industry, especially now with everything that is going on with the pandemic, and that kind of changed the entire rules of the game. and we're kind of in a state of uproar right now, where you don't really know what's certain and what's not, what's going to happen. How would you describe what's going on right now? I know, well, a while ago, before we got started, you were saying, and I completely agree, you were saying when you're in the studio, it's like, well, you're in quarantine. Actually, it's just like that. You don't even notice when it's day or night. But how would you describe what's the current state of affairs in the industry right now?
In the industry specifically, you mean?
Yeah, well, you can take it wherever you want.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, I mean, everything's, because we're right in the middle of it, I suppose at the moment, everything seems quite apocalyptic and that, oh God, we'll never play again. But I mean, I have a feeling that when things do come back, I mean, this clearly will have to end and we're going to have to find a way. I mean, I guess we're in, certainly when it comes to live performance, we're in probably one of the worst industries in the world as far as this and big sports events are, I mean, obviously not on for the moment. But I think when it does come back, it's going to come back very strong, because it seems like people are just going to realize how much they miss it. How much they miss music, going to the theater, like seeing plays, seeing comedy. It's just, it's an essential part of being human. And as I was saying to someone earlier, like we've never had it all just snatched away from us ever in our life. So it's something you'd read about in a Orwellian book,
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's never happened, and it's almost like a social experiment. It's like you take that away from people, and I think that it's gonna become back very, very strong. It's just gonna be such a release to sort of just see, and it'll probably change the nature of how a lot of art is done. I think the live music thing will have to come back. I think it's gonna, we just have to. Everyone just needs to sort of buckle down and get through this.
Yeah, I completely agree. Right now, everything is like really confusing, because you cannot be certain of what's going to happen. Actually, things change from week to week. But I completely agree. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. There was I'm a member of the producer and engineers wing of the academy, and we had a Zoom meeting like 2 weeks ago, the board of directors, and we were talking amongst ourselves, and there's people from all over the world, all over the Latin industry, people from Argentina, people from Spain, Colombia, the United States, Brazil, and we were kind of summarizing our experiences during the lockout situation all over the world, and there was like a common thread. It was really weird, or curious, I would say. In the beginning, they were all saying that it was really confusing, that they were just stopped. But then in the last 2 to 3 weeks, everybody's been getting calls for jobs, for gigs, because, well, the artists are locked down writing music, and that's all they can do because there are no live performances. So they are writing and writing and writing, and they as soon as this is over, you know they want to go back to the studios and start recording what they've been writing, and a lot of them have tons of material. So it is, I agree with what you were saying, that when it comes back, it's going to be really strong.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of and there's a lot of innovation is going on as well to keep the when the pandemic started in February, whenever, and when the lockdown started to happen, I'd been working in New York on this project with a friend of mine, which is something I've never done before. But I was working on a Broadway musical as a music supervisor, orchestrator, doing. It's a thing called Sing Street, which a friend of mine called Gary Clark wrote all the songs for. Very talented man, and he asked me to help him on this thing. And obviously Broadway got shut down, and we were just about to open, and it was all very exciting. It was a very young cast, so there was a lot of, some of them first time on Broadway, and everyone was a little bit. But within 2 weeks, we'd got together an online version and like made this sort of 45-minute version for charity online, which was a technical nightmare. But luckily, I wasn't anything to do with the technical side. I was just playing bits of music and sending it over. But the innovation that they all showed just to get things like this together, just to keep the interest along. And we had we had so many views, and it's really kept the interest up. And bands are doing that as well. The bands are, keeping the content up. And I think it's great. I think we'll be through it. But yeah, it will probably throw up some interesting consequences musically with the way people are working,
Yeah, it's starting, like you said, it's starting to happen right now.
Yeah, there's going to be some interesting changes. But I have a friend, actually, it's a friend of my wife's who works with Live Nation, who promote us and promote just about everything in the world. Yeah. And she was telling us the other day that festivals are going back in Australia. There's 10,000 seaters opening up in certain parts of the world. They're doing some of these drive-through gigs with people in their cars, which is not necessarily the best way to see a gig, but they're selling them out. So it's just innovation, isn't it? It's humans are clever when they're in trouble. They can.
I agree, and it happens so fast. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I had a session where I was here in Peru. The artist was singing. She was singing in Bogota, Colombia, and the guitar player was in Miami. And at the beginning, it was kind of like a huge headache, but towards
you weren't doing it live though, surely.
Well, she was singing. It was a recording session.
Oh, right, I see. So because that's the trouble we had, because obviously
no, that's very different. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Isn't there? You can't, it's exactly. It's amazing. With the version of the musical we did, we had 2 cast members in Ireland, 1 in London. Gary, my partner in the music department in Scotland, loads in New York, and we were all sort of putting this thing together. It was amazing.
Wonderful. Should we start getting some questions from the audience?
Absolutely.
Okay. I have one here from Javier. Well, I think you answered that. He's asking if it's really true that there's some rumors that Depeche Mode is going to be recording a new album this year.
It's probably unlikely this year, just because logistically, I think this.
The whole year just got turned around, upside down.
I can't. Yeah, exactly. I can't imagine a time where we're going to get everything together into a studio. But we are, as I said, me and Christian have been doing some stuff. I know Martin's been in the studio. He lives in California. I know he's been in the studio doing some, and he said he's written a few things. So I think the plan at the moment, as far as I can tell, the only thing I would know is that we're assuming that there will be a record, but we wouldn't know when it's going to be. But as we've all got a lot of time on our hands and we're all bored, and Martin needs some peace from his two young children, he goes off to the studio and writes a song instead. So and eventually, so hopefully when we open up, we go, oh look, we've got 12 great songs. I think that would be the best thing, so that there's not that another delay while everyone has to go and write songs, So with a bit of luck, as soon as is humanly possible, and we'll have enough songs to hopefully get in and get something done.
Great. There's we have a bunch of questions now. Most of them are writing in Spanish, so let me translate them as I'm reading them. We have one here from Jorge Gonzalez. What is your approach? Where's your point of view to Latin music?
I love Latin music. It's one of my favorite things to see. I can play it badly, but it's yeah, no, the sort of all of the sort of or anything with that sort of Afro-Cuban. I love Brazilian music. I spent some time in Brazil a couple of years ago, where we saw a lot of that sort of bossa and samba and stuff. But I think I just love watching the sort of the Cuban, the sort of Afro-Cuban and Buena Vista sort of grooves. I mean, there's just nothing like it to me, to be honest. I just had my 1 year wedding anniversary a couple of weeks ago, and I was at the wedding. My wife is Chilean, so we were playing loads of really cool sort of Latin American beats, and it was great.
Wow,
I wish I could play it better. I saw a band. In fact, you just said that you were in Bogota. I was in a club with a couple of our crew in Bogota, and we saw this band, and I couldn't take my eyes off the piano player, because that sort of Montuna thing. They just do it like, I mean, it's in the blood. I mean, I can kind of do it, but I'm having to really concentrate, and it's like these guys have been doing it since they were 3 years old or something, and they can do it whilst like making pasta on the other hand. It's amazing. Yeah, no, it's one of my favorite things to listen to, especially live.
Wonderful. We have another one here from Oscar. He says, what kind of advice would you give to someone that is considering quitting music? Well, he basically says it's because of everything that is going on with the pandemic. It's very difficult. People are having serious doubts, and
Yeah, I get that, and I'm sorry, I missed the name of the young man.
Oscar.
I'm sure Oscar is he's going to be he's going to be a lot younger than me, and I can see that it might look like all completely like doom and gloom at the moment. I would say to Oscar, you should hold on for a bit. If you love doing it, I mean, if you don't love doing it, then no one should do it, because it's not the easiest way to sort of progress in the world. But if you love doing it, I wouldn't let this period make you stop doing it. Just do it because you love it for the moment, and don't worry. We'll be fine. The music industry will survive. And if that's your main worry if that's why you're thinking of stopping, don't let 6 months affect potentially the rest of your life.
I agree. This is just like a really rough patch, but
and 6 months at Oscar's age probably sounds like a lot longer time than it does to you or me. But well, certainly me. You look younger than me, but yeah, no, keep at it, Oscar.
Exactly.
Give it a bit of time. Write an album about it, about how you feel.
Great, thank you. Now we have another question from one of our teachers, Cesar. He's asking, how would you characterize the reception that the main audience gave to the synth pop movement in the 80s in the UK?
How would I characterize sorry, could you say that again, please, Manuel?
How would you, simultaneously translating, so how would you characterize the sort of reception or the welcoming that the general public, the general audience gave to the synth pop movement in the UK in the 80s?
Yeah. Oh, it was huge, wasn't it? It was this massive explosion of weirdly enough, at the time it wasn't really, because as I was saying earlier, I was at the time obsessing over Stevie Wonder records and very different records. But I think it was just it was a whole movement, and it just went crazy over here, as I'm sure it did over there. I mean, Depeche Mode are probably one of the biggest global phenomenons that came out of it. But they were obviously very influenced by Kraftwerk and a lot of the sort of early Berlin electro scene and all of that. But no, it was huge. It was huge. A friend of mine plays in Duran. He's the drummer for Duran Duran, and we've talked about it. It was just a reaction to the sort of big trashy, the sort of punk thing, wasn't it? Really, it was the next logical step. We'd had 3 or 4 years of punk, and then it was like, oh, this is new. And the whole sort of image, I think it also, the other thing about the 80s, it was not just in music, it was this incredible technological decade, wasn't it? I mean, with computerization and mobile phones and all these, tech was really coming into its own. So the fact that music started to sound more tech sort of based was just really a reflection of the age. I think, it was probably happening in lots of the arts, but certainly in music, and same in movies. Special effects, where just the whole otherworldliness of these sounds that nobody'd ever heard of and had never sort of focused on. Yeah, it was a massive explosion over here, and I'm sure over there as well.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that in the 80s in the UK there was in terms of the political situation and the sociological situation were very intense, I would say too, right? So
yeah,
younger audiences were looking for something new.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually the young people rebelling against their dads or their older brothers, which creates good music,
Yes.
So when you find yourself, when you get a bit older and you find yourself going, oh, what is this rubbish? It's probably something that's not rubbish, and you're just old. At that point, you just don't get it, Dad. But that's good. That's how we got Elvis, and that's how we got the Beatles, and that's how we got Pink Floyd. So it all, it's just a progression, isn't it? It's a reaction. It's usually a reaction against the last.
Exactly. Okay, we have one from Argentina. Our friend Fernando is writing from Argentina, and he's asking, you've worked with Depeche Mode and George Michael and Seal, many different artists, and he's asking if the experience is sort of the same, or is it different depending on the artist? I guess the answer is different, but I'll let you go ahead.
Well, the answer is different, but the answer is so much more different than you can imagine, except in certain ways. But I think I had a period of where I was quite popular for a while. So people were, as somebody, if you wanted somebody to play piano on your record or to, so I was getting a lot of different sorts of people asking me to do stuff. And it was weird because I did a bit of work with Roger Daltrey from The Who, and I did a tour with him, and that band is just like, make as much noise as you can all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that it's almost like a fight to see who can get the most attention, and it's exciting and it's raw and it's not rehearsed, it's rough, and it's so you go from something like that to playing with George, who literally wants to find out exactly what everyone's doing at every one point, which is the total anti. You couldn't get two things more different. And then you go and play on a sort of like a little pop record or something. And then I had a couple of artists in France that were doing very sort of weird bluesy stuff, which was very interesting. And I think, I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, is you just have to get there and you just have to buy into the whole philosophy. You have to buy into the whole. So if you're, you know, you don't turn up to a Depeche Mode session and start trying to play blues all over the place, because that clearly is not going to work. And the same, you don't start putting sequences on a Who record. But you have to sort of just, that's, I think, part of the thing with, if you are working like that, that you have to sort of get there and go, right, this is now my universe. What is my universe? So with someone like George Michael, your universe is, right, super precise, super beautiful, you know, really, you know, make everything really sort of beautiful and yearning. You know, and you get to a Roger Daltrey session and, okay, my universe here is, I need to be louder than everyone else. And I need to, you know, same with Depeche, that's a whole different thing. You know, Depeche, you need to be super precise. Nothing's going to be that hard. But you know, again, you don't. So I think it is very, very different. But you know, ultimately, you're all, whether you're doing a weird electro record or a little pop record, you're still trying to do the best thing that you can. Everyone's there to, you know, with the same intent.
Yeah, I always tell the students that it is a really tough gig. You have to get inside the artist's head.
Yeah. You just have to inhabit that world while you're there. And I know a lot of great musicians, really, really good musicians who don't necessarily do that. And, you know, I think that's why they find it hard to sort of work in that area, you know. I mean, there are certain musicians who are so good at one thing that they just do that one thing, and that's great. But if you know, they're very special. So for most of us, I think, you know, just being able to sort of like be a little bit versatile and just understand what the rules are for that world, for that day. I think that's a good philosophy.
Yeah. Let's see, I'm kind of scrolling down here. There's one saying, what do you think of tribute bands?
Tribute bands. They're becoming very good, aren't they? Some of them are becoming very good.
Oh yeah.
Actually, there's it's a long time ago. I toured with Roger Daltrey in the mid '90s in America. And we were going to do this. We were going to do a few dates, and we were rehearsing, and we got asked to go to a Who convention. And we got there, and they had there's a Who tribute band called Deja Who, which was the biggest Who tribute band, and they were so good. I mean, they were actually at the time, and we were like, God, they're actually better than us at the moment, because we'd only done one day's rehearsal, and we didn't really know what we were doing. So, there's a couple of interesting Depeche Mode ones. Again, I mean, there's some of them. There's one I think that plays to like 1,500, 2,000 people. They do these big club shows, and I mean that's a good audience, isn't it? Really. But I think it's also, I think they're getting a lot more higher end as well with their production. I mean, some of the ones over here, they're very. They've really sort of nailed it. The production value is getting much higher, and it's getting much more like the real thing.
Yeah, like I said, I'm scrolling down the questions, and I'm kind of sorting out the ones that you kind of answered before. But I keep seeing one that keeps popping up from different people, and I guess I'm kind of forced to ask it. There's kind of like a common thread here. A bunch of people are asking if you see the creative process as different now in the industry now.
Definitely. I think what you mean now as opposed to years ago, or now 6 months ago. No, I think it's incredibly different, and it's one that, you know, that it's hard to sort of unlearn. You know, anyone's going to learn music at a particular stage in their life, and those are going to be the things that they gravitate towards. So, you know, as I said, playing a Stevie Wonder album for me is, I mean, I can play that stuff all day. But you know, times change. And as we were saying, you know, that production sounds change, production values change. And I think, you know, I mean, obviously a major part of it would be the fact that everyone's got a studio in their bedroom. And, you know, what a studio that probably would have cost you £2,000 a day and cost you 600 grand to set up is now in front of you and me right now.
Yes.
And the possibilities of doing that, you know, it's become an instrument, hasn't it? The Mac has become an instrument. I mean, and
Yes.
it's not an instrument that, you know, I suppose I'm much more traditional. If I have some complicated Mac stuff to do, like the sort of the really clever programming, I would much prefer to have someone else be working with me, because it's not my area of expertise really. But I think that's a major change, isn't it? That you can create from that space as well as just picking up a guitar or a piano. It also has its dangers, because it's so easy to just make something sound good, which is a little bit, you know, you still need an idea. You know, it's not enough to put 3 loops together and say, right, I've created a piece of music. You'll probably find that no one wants to listen to that piece of music because it just won't have any heart in it. But you do, but you know, the fact that you've got all those tools that you're right there for you is going to change the way things sound, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think that the creative, I mean, the spark of creativity, it will always be the same, but things have changed. Like, for example, like you said, you put it very well. The computer now is an instrument, and things like Pro Tools or Logic are also an instrument. That's
something can start from there, can't it? Whereas, you know, I suppose in my more sort of slightly traditional thing, it'll start from me playing something. Yeah. Then I'll go to the computer. Whereas that's not necessarily the way, you know, somebody, you know, of a younger generation is going to think. You know, they're not necessarily. I mean, there are some, you know, it's clearly going to be some Ed Sheeran types of guys around who pick up a guitar and that's how they write a song. But, you know, he's still going to get involved in the beats and all of that.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I just remembered a long time ago when I was really young. I was going to school back in the States, and I remember seeing probably one of the last TV interviews that John Lennon gave before he was shut down. And he said one of the questions was, "How do you see music in the future?" And he said, I remember very clearly, he said, "Well, the essence is going to be the same. There's only 12 notes and that's it. But what I think is going to play a huge role is technology."
Yeah.
Yeah, he was absolutely right.
He got that right, didn't he? Yeah, as he got quite a lot of things right.
Yes. Oh, yes, indeed. I think this is one of the last ones. Do you have this is from Anna. Do you have a preferred synth, she says?
I think I've always been a bit of a, I'm endorsed by Roland, and I'm not just saying this because I'm endorsed by Roland, but when I was, my first synth was a Juno 6.
Wow, 106.
Yeah, I had a 6 and a 106. And then that was when I was a kid, and I used to play gigs in a pub with it. And I always wanted a Jupiter 8, which is, I mean, now they're incredibly expensive and you don't see it come up much, but I mean, Martin's got every synth. There isn't a synth you can name that Martin doesn't have in his studio. But yeah, I'd love to. I might try and steal his Jupiter 8 one day if I'm there while he's making the tea. Just snip in and see if I can put it in my briefcase. They're quite big though. So yeah, I do. I have a thing about the sort of the old lush. I really like that sort of Roland, that analog, sort of fat string sounds and the, you know, that you get from the especially the Jupiter 8 and those kind of things. And obviously, you know, I love messing around with the Moog, which is always a bit of a laugh. But I think I like Oberheims as well. I like the big.
Oh,
that's a
DOBX. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a real. You know, it's an Oberheim, don't you? You just know it's got. You just know that sound.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a huge analog buff too. I mean, it's the texture of those synths just can't be replicated. I mean, it's.
Have you got a lot of them outboard, or do you use plugins and stuff?
Yes, I do have, especially at our studio. I also work with, you know, virtual synths.
Yeah.
They're okay. They're really cool. But when you compare them to the actual thing, it's, for example, I have a 101. The you were talking about, Roland, the SH101.
SH101, yeah, I have one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the texture you get from the synth basses is just incredible. I mean, you don't have to do anything to them.
Yeah,
it's
right there. Yeah, when Christian and I were last working together at his studio, he's got a what's it called, MS-20, and I'd done something at home, and I'd used a virtual MS-20, and I just and we got there, and he's got a real one, and we just replaced what I'd done, and the difference was just ridiculous. I mean, it was like no comparison. It just sits in a place where you can't. Yeah, no, we had a few of those. Yeah, I think we were using SH101 for some of the basses as well.
Yeah, I know exactly. It's so different. I mean, and the virtual synths are really cool. They're really good, but when you have the real deal, it's.
And I think what we found is because, you know, Christian's got a few things over there. I took a couple of things, and once we started putting real synths on things, as soon as we tried to do something virtual, it just somehow stood out. It just didn't want to blend with the other children. You know, it didn't want to play with the other kids. And so we just couldn't use anything. It was just everything we did that was virtual, we ended up losing, because it just felt, there's a certain processing that you sort of get, and you notice it more when you've got something to compare it to in the track, you know, like if you've got a real Moog bass and then you put a virtual something on it. So let's find a real one.
Yeah. Yeah. We're on the same page again. Well, I think that's it. Let's because like I said, a bunch of the questions that I'm seeing in front of us are kind of a repeat, or you sort of answered them a while ago when you were talking, when we were talking.
Happy to answer them again if I need to.
Well, there's one that is kind of catching my eye. Just one second, because it's kind of big. There's one. Okay, we have another one saying, which do you have like one special moment in your career that you would characterize as the most important moment in your career?
Oh, that's tricky.
Yeah.
I suppose you'd have to say, really, as things turned out, my first meeting with Martin Gore in 1997, I think it was. Yeah. So yeah, they needed obviously somebody to replace Alan, and I just there was, I think they had about, my agent called me up. I had an agent at the time and just said, do you want to go and meet Depeche Mode? And first of all, I had to meet the tour manager, who for some reason didn't like me that much. So he went back to Martin and said, I didn't really feel him. And so there were about 6 other guys that Martin saw before me. And then Martin didn't really get on with anyone. And so he just sort of went, can I see the one that you don't like? And we just, Martin and I hit it off quite quickly, and we, you know, had a, I mean, it was supposed to be an audition, but, you know, we ended up just having a little sing. We sang some gospel songs together, and he asked me to do it straight away. So that was a fairly key moment, I'd say. It's turned out a couple of moments with George before that had been quite good for raising my profile a bit, I suppose. I ended up playing piano on his, he did that, there's a, you know, that song, I Can't Make You Love Me?
Yes.
Beautiful song, Bonnie Raitt song. He covered that, and that became one of those sort of tracks that just went everywhere, and it went out as a single, and I've got awful hair, but there's a video of me on it, and it's just that I seem to get I still get quite a lot of calls about that, and got a lot of attention through that. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be, I mean, a lot of, hate to say it, but you know, with music, like a lot of things, a lot of it is going to be just luck and being in the, you know, I'm a pretty good musician, but there's a lot of pretty good musicians out here, and you just need that little moment.
So you played the piano, you cut the piano track on the George Michael version of I Can Make You Love Me, right?
Yeah, it was actually a live gig. It was
wow.
It came from a live gig. It was unplugged, you know.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So the recording of that, which is what became the record, was just our live performance on the day. After rehearsing it over and over again with George, obviously, but
that's a wonderful song.
It's a beautiful song, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So that was a few, and you know, there's always going to be, I can't think of them all at the moment, there's always little key moments when you learn something and you go, oh, this is going to change things. And but yeah, I'd say probably those two moments are, you know, certainly, you know, going to meet Martin and ending up playing with his band for 20 years was quite an interesting thing.
I kind of sympathize with you're saying, because sometimes the kids also ask, the students also ask, well, how did you ended up producing that album, or how did you ended up working with that artist, or how did you do that thing on that album? And I say, I don't know, this stuff just happens. I mean,
this is moving into the realms of philosophy now, because it's like, I mean, yeah, you don't know. I mean, I think I would go with the slightly sort of spiritual or whatever concept that, you know, you have to be open to things happening. So opportunities will hopefully present themselves, and if you've done the preparation and if you can spot them when they come, and you know when to sort of go, like, this is important, I just need to focus now and get this right, then that's going to be good. So it's a question of, is that luck, or are you sort of just making your own luck to a degree? You know, just, yes, you have to be in the right place at the right time, but you also have to be the right person at the right time, or the right musician at the right time, or whatever it is you're trying to do. But yeah, you're going to need a break somewhere, but yeah, just make sure when that break happens that you're sort of ready to take advantage, hopefully.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Listen, Peter, I don't want to take advantage of your time. So I want to ask our co-hosts if there's anything else that they would like to add on my behalf. This has truly been a wonderful experience talking to you. I'm so grateful for the opportunity, and especially for you sharing this time with our students, and well, all the other people that are joining us that are not our students. I see a bunch of people that are not in the school, but this has been a wonderful experience, really. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Manuel, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for having me.
So glad. I'll leave it up to Mauricio and Carlos to see if they have something else that they want to add.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's been an enormous pleasure and and I think a memorable occasion for the School of Music. We've been greatly honored for sort of having you. I thank you again for your generosity, for your time, for your engagement with the school, with our students. I think it's been hugely uplifting for everyone, and especially for aspiring musicians as the ones we have at the school. So thank you really very, very much. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure, Mauricio. It's very kind of you.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much, Peter. Really, thank you. There's Carlos.
Thank you so much, Peter. We are so grateful to have you here today.
No problem.
Huge event for us. I hope we'll repeat it in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, hopefully at some point we can come over there and play a gig, but probably not yet.
Yeah, I understand. So thank you so very much.
Hey, my pleasure, man.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Peter.
Muchas gracias a todos por su participación. Pueden ver más adelante la repetición de esta conversación en las redes de la universidad, en las redes de la Escuela de Música. Buenas tardes a todos, muchas gracias por asistir. Bye bye.
Take care.